Hello everyone, and welcome back to Conspiraseed. This video is going to be on the Kozyrev mirror, and was actually requested by my father, and I tell you what, there's not a lot of information online about it. The wiki article has 3 paragraphs of pretty much non-information, and I only found one Reddit post about it, which had very little information. I found 3 government websites though, so I read through 114 pages of government documents, which I had to decipher. I found an article on the website Medium about the Kozyrev mirror luring UFOs to the North Pole, and I found this YouTube video about it as well, all of which have provided me with the information needed to bring this video to you today. But boy oh boy, was this one a doozy. With all that said, this video has taken me perhaps the second longest amount of time to research due to having to decipher government documents. So first off, I apologize to my dad that this took so long to come out. Second off, I'd like to say that this is going to be a kind of a science heavy episode, so I apologize if it's not like true crime, like oh who committed this murder, kind of exciting. And third off, a like or a sub would be greatly appreciated with all this extra time that it took. With all of that being said, of course, let's just get into it.
Nothing like being subscribed to Conspiraseed on YouTube. Nothing like it.
Let's start off by asking, what is a Kozyrev mirror? Nikolai Kozyrev did experiments in the 1990s using what would become known as the Kozyrev mirror. This was supposed to be used to enhance a person's psychic abilities, or ESP. They used a piece of sheet metal that would bend into the form of a Fibonacci spiral, and a person would sit within the structure. This right here is a Fibonacci spiral, also known as the golden spiral because its growth factor is the golden ratio, which means that the spiral gets wider by a factor of the golden ratio for every quarter turn it makes. It's called the Fibonacci spiral because it follows something called the Fibonacci sequence, which is where a number is the sum of the 2 previous numbers. So the first 2 numbers in the Fibonacci sequence are 0 and 1. 0 plus 1 equals 1. So the first 3 numbers are 0, 1, and 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, and so on. So the first couple numbers are 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Here is a representation of a Fibonacci spiral within the sequence. I'm not sure if the setup, like having it be within the sequence, is important, or if just a tube made of sheet metal would work and like you could like lay inside it or like jump inside it somehow. I wasn't really able to find anything out about that specifically. Okay, so now that we have the science of this exact mirror out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about what happened in the mirror. Not only did things happen in the mirrored spiral, but around it as well. After the mirror was first built, disc-shaped lights were seen hovering around the lab. Balls of energy were seen, and the northern lights became more pronounced. This, of course, is all happening near the North Pole in Russia. Within the lab near Siberia, anyone who approached the device got a sudden feeling of dread, and it took multiple days before anyone would actually try it out. Once the first person finally did sit down, not only did it increase their psychic abilities, but there was a burst of energy from within, and they could very soon view any place in the world within the mirror, and shortly after that, they could see any place within time. It seemed, to Kozyrev at least, that it confirmed a theory first thought of in the 1950s, that time as we know it doesn't exist. I've seen videos on this subject, and I've even thought about making one myself, but essentially what this theory is saying is that all of time is happening at the same time. We as humans think of time as a line, as a universal clock. 1 second for me is 1 second for you. However, the future might already exist, and the 3 ways we separate out time, past, present, and future, are nothing more than illusions created by our 3-dimensional minds. This is because of Einstein's theory of relativity. A second for me isn't necessarily the same second that you would experience. And events don't have to unfold in the same order for 2 observers within the universe. For instance, you might see a cow taken to slaughter, butchered, and then cooked, but someone else might see a cow being uncooked, put together, and then brought back to life. It all depends on the reference point of the person. This is possible because of the relationship between space and time. Think about your daily life. Maybe you're awake at 9 a.m. in your room, at noon you're at school or work, and at 8 p.m. you're at an arcade or a bar. You are at a specific place at a specific time. Relativity merges space and time into a single fourth-dimensional structure, space-time. We should think of space-time the way that we just think of space. All of space already exists outside of our world, and any point within space can be described by coordinates or three-dimensional directions. So, we can think of time in the same way. All of time already exists as well, and any events that may have happened or will ever happen already exist, described by their own coordinates or fourth-dimensional directions within the universe. Relativity really starts to come into play here as well with motion. We can prove that time is relative with motion. Two clocks that have the exact same atomic time and are perfectly synced can mismatch with enough motion. An experiment was done in 1971 which proved relativity. 4 atomic clocks were used in this experiment. 2 stayed in an observatory in Washington, and 2 were flown around the world, one east, one west. When the 2 that flew got back to the observatory, they had gained 0.15 microseconds. There's also since been experiments with atomic clocks in space travel also proving relativity. Using this math, we can actually break it down into super simple terms that help prove relativity, and that the faster an object is moving, the slower time moves for that object. Let's say that you left Earth on a spaceship in the year 2000, and the spaceship goes at 99% the speed of light for 5 years on a round trip. 2.5 years out, 2.5 years back. While only 5 years have passed for you, 36 years would have passed on Earth, and the year wouldn't be 2005, but 2036. You, and everyone aboard the ship, will have only aged 5 years, while all of your friends and family back home would have aged 36 years. Go out far enough, and by the time you get back, you could witness the passing of your own grandchild of old age, while you only aged a little more than a decade. So using this theory of time relativity, it should be possible to view any point in time as they're all happening at once. Back to the man within the chamber, within the Kozyrev mirror. He started to feel even more uneasy, and had a guttural, instinctual fear within him, telling him that he needed to leave the chamber immediately. He also felt nausea and a heavy sense of dizziness. The man was told that this was a common feeling, and that if he could make it past this feeling, he would be okay, he would feel better, and the experiment could continue. There were multiple test sites set up with this experiment all over Russia, and communication with the common consensus was that this was happening to every person who entered the mirror. After about an hour, the man said that his nausea was subsiding, his dizziness turned into a feeling of floating, and that his guttural, instinctual fear turned into an overwhelming calm and warmth. The man then said that he could see through the mirror as if it was no longer a mirror, but a transparent wall. But outside of the walls, he didn't see the cold stone of the lab. He saw the sun, and could hear birds, and the sounds of children playing. He reported that his consciousness was no longer within the chamber, but had passed through this wall and into the sunny area. Suddenly, he was behind a child who was walking. The child stopped and turned around for a second. And this is when the man recognized who it was. It was him as a 5-year-old. He recognized the shoes, he recognized the clothes, and even the surrounding area was now familiar to him. The man now realized the child was staring at him. But how could that be possible if it's him from the past? The child said, "Who are you?" And the man was instantly snapped back to the chamber, to the cold mirror in the Arctic Circle lab. This is just one of many stories, and all share similar experiences of time travel, projection, a feeling of no longer being in the mirror, but being where they see, being able to interact with the environment, a feeling of weightlessness, a feeling of flight, etc. In fact, they began to link human consciousness with the Earth's magnetosphere. 2 different people over 1,000 miles away would sit in the mirror, and both would think about the same image and focus on sending this image into the magnetosphere when it was particularly active, such as during solar storms. The second half of this experiment included 5,000 participants in over 12 countries around the world trying to focus on receiving that image. If the magnetosphere was active, the success rate of this experiment was 95%. So 95% of participants, 4,750 out of the 5,000, could say what the image being sent out was. This was, of course, a huge shock to Kozyrev and the others running this experiment. This also came as a shock to the CIA, who at this point was paying very close attention to the experiments being run. In one experiment, the people within the mirrors only thought of a number, not an image. The number, however, corresponded with an image of a triangle, almost a TP tent looking image. The people who received this number via the magnetosphere, via the mirror, were able to look up the number and draw the corresponding image. This is what was drawn. The top image is the image that corresponded to the number 63, and the bottom is what was drawn by the participants. According to the CIA documents, they believe that the Kozyrev mirror is a way to unlock human psychic ability and to fully awaken human consciousness. This document, however, despite many attempts via the Freedom of Information Act, remains classified and has never been fully seen by the public. A huge question remains with this experiment. Is any of it true? You've probably never heard of the Kozyrev mirror or this experiment before, and that's because mainstream science doesn't take it seriously at all. So if mainstream science doesn't take it seriously, why do intelligence agencies all over the world? Two of the main scientists have given multiple interviews, released their research, and throughout this whole time, their stories haven't changed. They don't appear to be nervous or lying in any way. Another question is, what reason would they have to lie? Their funding was already secured by the Soviet state, which we all know lying to the Soviet state isn't exactly the smartest thing to do. So what do they have to gain from lying? Kozyrev himself had multiple theories that were scoffed at by the scientific community as a whole that were later proven to be true. In fact, this one might have just been proven a few months ago. Using a mirror to reflect time sounds about as fake and as science fiction as can be. And up until March of 2023, it was. In March of 2023, a time experiment was conducted in New York using a wave and metamaterial. The time wave went into the time mirror moving forward, but came out moving backward in what's known as a time reflection. This proves that Kozyrev is correct, and that time is not as linear as we thought. Kozyrev also said that time affects things physically, which is in the process of being tested right now. Geologists have never been able to predict earthquakes, having an only 8% prediction accuracy rating. However, Dr. Travamov, who has been using a Kozyrev mirror to predict earthquakes, has a 61% accuracy. What do these people have to gain from lying? Their research is published, they don't need more money, and they're clearly not after fame, as the Kozyrev mirror is on the fringe of knowledge. You can actually buy a Kozyrev mirror online, or you can buy the materials and build one yourself, as sheet metal isn't really too expensive. And I'll tell you what, I'll make y'all a deal. If this video gets 1 million views within 6 months, I will purchase a Kozyrev mirror and tell you my experiences. If you'd like to learn more about the Kozyrev mirror, I have a few links down below. One is to a subreddit I was able to find right after I finished this script, to the Kozyrev Mirrors subreddit, and another is to the Kozyrev Mirror video by the Y-Files. Huge shout out to my dad for suggesting this topic, and I know that the beginning of the video was a lot of science explanations, but I found this whole subject very interesting to learn about. Let me know your thoughts on the mirror and what it could possibly mean for human consciousness, time travel, space travel, down in the comments below. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with me today. I really and truly do appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next one.